Once upon a time, in the busy city of Lumina, there lived an extraordinary woman named Mrs. Lien Mourlen. Mrs. Mourlen wasn't just any ordinary lady. She was renowned for her exceptional ability to bring life to the most mundane of objects. With her trusty paintbrush and a palette of vibrant colors, she turned old, forgotten trinkets into animated masterpieces. One sunny morning, as Mrs. Mourlen strolled through the local market, her eyes sparkled with joy. She spotted a plain, dusty old tea kettle in one of the stalls. Its dulled exterior hid its potential, but Mrs. Mourlen saw right through it. She knew that with a little bit of love and a splash of color, this kettle could be something magical. Without hesitation, she purchased the kettle and hurried back to her cozy little studio. The room was filled with all sorts of treasures, from vintage clocks to antique shoes, all waiting their turn to be transformed by Mrs. Mourlen's artistic touch. She placed the kettle gently on her work table and got to work. With each stroke of her brush, the ordinary kettle began to change. The gray metal turned into a brilliant shade of emerald green, and tiny golden stars appeared to dance across its surface. Mrs. Mourlen added her final flourish, a delicate silver handle shaped like a crescent moon. As she stepped back to admire her work, something incredible happened. The kettle began to tremble and shake slightly, and then, to Mrs. Mourlen's delight, it sprouted tiny legs and a whimsical little face. It pranced around the table, chirping happily and tipping its lid as if to say, "Thank you." Word of the incredible Mrs. Lien Mourlen and her magical creations spread quickly throughout Lumina. People from near and far brought her their old, lifeless belongings, hoping to see them transformed into enchanting, animated objects. Each day, her studio buzzed with excitement and wonder as new creations sprang to life. One day, a young girl named Ella brought Mrs. Mourlen a worn-out music box that had been her grandmother's. It was broken, lifeless, and could no longer play its sweet melody. Ella's eyes brimmed with hope as she handed it over. Mrs. Mourlen smiled warmly and promised Ella that she would do her best. That evening, under the soft glow of her studio lights, Mrs. Mourlen worked her magic. She painted the music box with delicate patterns of flowers and butterflies. As she wound the key, the box sprang to life, and a beautiful ballet dancer twirled gracefully to the melody of a lullaby. Ella's face lit up with pure joy as she watched her grandmother's treasured music box come alive again, spinning and singing like it once did. From that day on, Mrs. Lien Mourlen continued to spread hope and happiness throughout Lumina with her extraordinary gifts. Her studio became a place of wonder, where the old became new again, and where anything seemed possible as long as it was touched by her incredible artistry. And so, the legend of the incredible Mrs. Lien Mourlen lived on, reminding everyone that with a little creativity and a lot of love, even the most ordinary things could become truly magical.